Okay, you guys ready? Should we do it? We're excited to have Louie back. So, most of you know Louie, that's probably why you're here. So thanks for attending. Louie sold his business Vanguard title, the Fidelity National title. That's not why we're here today. This isn't a title CE class. This is his other company, Louie Talks. But I have the freedom to mention whatever I want when I'm up here. This is my house. So feel free to reach out to them, Brondi, if you need anybody to help with your title work. So we're excited for body language. Louie does a lot of classes on communication skills and conversations. And when I saw this one on body language, it's like, okay, there's a whole other component to conversations. It's what we're doing, right, with our body language. And we had a conversation about that, and it's interesting because I don't pay that much attention to it. I'm not analyzing people when I'm talking to you. It's like, oh, you just raised your eyebrows. What did I, you know, or hand gestures, but it's an important part. And if you saw the little teaser trailer that we did, I don't even remember the percentages, but only 7% of communication is our words. And what's the percentage of body language? 55%. So that's huge. It's something that we should probably pay attention to. So I'm gonna have Louie just come up here and rip into it. This is a CE class. You guys that are in Utah, I know some of you aren't in Utah, but this is just a Utah CE credit. What did you say they need to do as a first?
I've got a link.
There's a link, they'll just need to sign in and out of.
Okay, so you have to sign in and out. Because they are kind of tracking your attendance for the 2 hours, right? So there's gonna be a link in the chat, click on that, put in your information, and then when the class is over, do it again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, come on up, Lee. Cool. Here's your clicker.
That music.
Oh, yeah, I'll turn it up. Yeah, sorry.
All right. I'm gonna, let's see, how do I?
I just heard it in my head. I didn't realize it was.
I do that. I just want to make sure I can see myself, how
Okay,
how they
gotcha.
see me.
Gotcha. Yep, you're on here too.
I am on mute.
No, you're on here too.
Okay, yeah, perfect. All right. So here we are. I'm excited to talk to you guys today about this. What Jeff said is important is why we're here with that 55% of what we say, 55% of what we actually communicate is through our body. And I've read countless books on this, and I've read a number of articles where the presenter of that book or the author of that book talked about, I remember one situation they talked about how they were at an interview. This guy they were doing an interview in a restaurant for a very high profile job, and because the blinds were a little bit open, and the sun was in the person's eyes, right? They were kind of squinting the whole time, kind of like this, just trying to get through the sun. And that alone communicated to them that the person that was interviewing felt skeptical about everything that was being said, and he didn't get the job. Does that make sense? Like something as simple as that was like, that change. It wasn't that talked about how the person was very qualified, probably the most qualified person, the person they were most excited about, but just because of that they couldn't get past the fact that whether he was the person's feelings, right, the person that was interviewed, yeah, perfect, I was just like that. But something as simple as that, right, changes what you perceive. Does that make sense? And we've all had this experience where we've seen somebody that we know, gone to some event or something, and we saw somebody that we knew, and the way they interacted with us, we thought that something was wrong in our relationship with them because the way they looked at you or something. Just they looked, gave you a smile or something, and now you've interpreted that look they gave you in a negative way, and then it sends you kind of spinning, kind of thinking like, what are they still mad about, or why would they? And now you're off in the story, right? Who's experienced this? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it's just that alone, right? No, notice, and we validated, or we gave that a lot of importance. We gave that a lot of meaning, and because we gave that a lot of meaning, it changed your next interaction with that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So happened last night. I was on a walk with my wife and we were talking about something that was important to me. That was like, I've had just personally going on with me, kind of talking about it. So we get close to, we're standing in the driveway, just kind of finishing up our conversation. And she's like, okay, yeah, or whatever. Anyway, we finished the conversation, then she immediately turns around, leaves, and goes into the house. And when she does that, I'm like, what the heck? What is she mad? Like, what is happening right now? Right? And she's in the house, and I'm thinking, what just happened? So I'm like, are you upset? What's going on? You know, she goes, oh no, I had to go pee real bad. But like for 30 seconds in my head, I'm like, what is going on right now? Right. So especially in a moment where you're talking about something that's super important, that could be, you know, that's emotion, that's sensitive for you. It's pretty important to be aware of that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So anyway, just throwing that out, but I want to start by showing you a couple slides. And I just hit this one, right?
Yeah, that's good.
First
I
slide.
clicked on something, so it always messes it up. So maybe I have to do.
Perfect. So first slide, just want to show you this. And I'm using this almost every time I teach. I kind of start off talking about this because I think it's so important. But Archimedes, right? Archimedes said, give me a place to stand, a lever long enough, and I will move you. So why did he say that? Well, he said that because what does a lever do for us? A lever magnifies our power, right? So, and who was Archimedes? One of the world's best mathematicians, scientists, right? He's even in Indiana Jones. The last movie, right? So what he was saying is there's nothing that he can't move if he has a place to stand and a lever that's long enough. And because levers magnify our power, and a class 2 lever is a hinge. And so if you think about what a hinge does, a hinge, I have a door in my house that probably weighs, I don't know, 300 pounds, maybe. That big wooden door, it's like a 300-pound door. And I can move that door with 2 fingers because of a lever. 300 pounds, and I can't even bench 300 pounds. I don't know, I don't even think I can squat 300 pounds, much less but I can move the whole thing with 2 fingers. Something that I cannot move with my full arm power and chest power. I cannot even move, but I can with 2 fingers. I can even move it with my weakest 2 fingers. Because that's what a lever does, it magnifies our power. And why that's important is because if you take a hinge and you look at it as like skills and attributes, when your skills and your attributes are at their best, like it magnifies your power. Makes sense? So we've all met somebody, have seen somebody who we say, wow, that person, super nice, very caring, like sees other people, all this stuff, but they have no idea, right, how to run a business or whatever. And what we say is we acknowledge their attributes and how amazing their attributes are, but then we also acknowledge where their skill set is and say, I don't know if I can trust them because even though they're super nice, super kind, all this stuff, I don't think they know what they're talking about. Right. And then if we flip it, knows a lot of stuff, super knowledgeable, high skill set, they don't give a shit. You know, no attributes, no, you know, they're like, I wouldn't trust them. Makes sense? So one or the other isn't enough. And especially in the market that we are today, one or the other is not enough. You have to have both. They're looking for both. They're looking for skills and attributes. And I don't have a slide for this, but if we would say when your skills and your attributes are at a high level and you're working on them, and then there's, and if I were to put it here, you know, purpose. You have a purpose, you know what your life purpose, you know why you do what you do. It just, that accentuates both of those things at a very high level. Because you're only going to do a certain skill you can only work a certain skill to the intention that you plan on using it. That makes sense? A skill you'll only achieve a skill high enough, or the competency of any skill will always be limited to the purpose that you have or the intention you have around using it. Right? So, and same with the skill, your skill, your attributes, you'll only work on who you are as a person to the level of contribution that you want to make to the world. Make sense? Like, you won't, because why won't we do this? Because it's painful to do both of them. It's painful to do either one of them. Right? So any skill set that you have, I would tell you that wherever that skill set is, regardless of the level, you can assign, you can look at like an attribute, like what would be, to me, what would be an attribute that would elevate an agent's skill set? To me, empathy, like enormously. Because what the person is about to do with them is very intimate, like it's their home, it's their largest investment, it's all of that. If a person isn't really seeing them for who they are and what their needs are, they're less likely to want to work with you. Makes sense? So I started out with this because it's important to recognize where you are and what skills, and every year, right? Every year we set goals. I want to get better at this, better at this. You ever set a goal like, yeah, I want to be more patient. I want to have more kindness when I talk with my clients. Like, honestly, for me, I never did it for, you know, that wasn't anything I thought I need to get better sales. I need to get better at this or whatever. But as I got, you know, older or more seasoned in my business, in my career, I started realizing that my skill set will only take me so far. And the rest of the distance is going to be who I've become. And what closes the gap quickly is my intention, my purpose behind that. So, body language, like what Jeff said, you know, 55% of what we communicate is our body language. And what I want you to do today, I want you to keep in mind, like, what are your 3 top takeaways? So as we talk about the concepts and the ideas behind body language, I want you to just maybe on a separate sheet of paper, just at the top, just put my 3 takeaways, like what really stood out to me, or my 3 aha moments, my aha moments or something, and then, you know, 2 or 3 aha moments, because at the end of the class, I'd like to hear what those are. And just for housekeeping's sake, we'll be taking a break in about an hour, about 10 minutes. And then we'll start back up. So in about an hour, so if you're thinking I gotta use the bathroom, we're gonna take a break, probably about 12 o'clock, something like that, right? So, and for those of you on Zoom, you can go anytime you want. I think we're gonna but just don't keep the camera in there and
Yeah.
so yeah, and you, perfect. So I want to talk about a couple things. One, we have understanding our limbic system. We have a limbic system that reacts and that works automatically, that we don't even know that it's happening. For example, when I talked about the guy sitting there with the sun glaring in his face, right? Things were happening in his mind, right? That was creating an awareness to the people that are interviewing him that he didn't know was happening. And the sun getting hotter, making gestures, doing things that are trying to cool himself off or whatever, like doing things that he doesn't even know that's happening. And so, but our limbic system is it's the emotional part of our brain. It's what we experience emotionally and how we respond emotionally without even thinking about it. It's just happening automatically. And so it's important to be conscientious of this or aware of this, so that when you're experiencing something, that you can counteract it or and change it. Makes sense? And also why it's important to understand it is because as a person, for example, as I'm talking to you, if we're talking about something that is emotionally, you know, charging for you because of the high stakes of it or whatever, I'm going to watch your body and respond. And even though your body is doing certain things, it may not be exactly what's happening inside of you, the purpose, or you may be experiencing it for another reason that I understand it, but it's important for me to watch and to know that that it's gonna be really hard for you to actually control that regardless, even if you're okay with what's happening or not. Does that make sense? So it's just important. So anyway, that's one thing we're gonna talk about those things today. So let's talk about this. We'll talk about pacifying behaviors, because when we are in a situation where we're nervous, even excited, right? They say nervousness is the same emotional response as being excited. It's just that nervous means I don't know what's going to happen. Excited means I know what's going to happen, right? And so we have these passive behaviors that we will do unknowingly. And it's important to be aware of these behaviors, because when you see somebody responding in this way, that you can kind of know that this is how they're understanding, or this is how they're taking the news or the information, or understanding what you're saying or the conversation. That makes sense? So give you a couple of examples of this. One, you do something that is soothing to yourself. Like it says on here, types of behalf, a gentle massage, a gentle massage, a stroke of our face, or you play with hair. There are things that we do that, and those indicate, those things are signs that what we're talking about is making me nervous, and I'm trying to soothe myself as I get through this conversation. Okay. So for example, let's see, yeah, it's gonna be hard on Zoom, but for example, I was sitting with a guy one time and we were negotiating something of high value. And as he was sitting down, let's see, can I move this just down a little bit? That I got you. Yeah, that. So just kind of show you, like we were sitting down, so he was sitting like this. So this was like this. We're sitting in a chair. We're talking. You start doing this.
That's hot.
And he's doing this like he's right. It's like I'm a little bit over exaggerating it, but like literally he was going like this. Then he would squeeze his leg, and then he'd do this, like he's doing this. And then I was watching him as he was sitting there. Then he started to rock just a little bit back and forth, like he would lean forward, then lean back, then lean forward. Let me just demonstrate this because I think it's important. So can you let's see? Yeah, you can see it. Yeah, you can see it's perfect. So he's sitting like this, talking to me, and he starts doing this. We're just talking. Then he'll go like this. Then we're talking, yeah, so, okay, and he's saying these things, he's like, then he'll lean forward, and he'll go back. And see, and so when he leans forward, and it kind of does this, in my mind, a little bit, I was thinking, is he interested? And what I realized is he was leaning forward, the more painful the conversation began, or was, we got to win, right? I'm saying this stuff, he's like, and then I would say something that was comforting about the situation, and then he'd go, okay, but then he'd lean forward and then lean back. And so I realized, like when we're in this negotiation, that I realized that he was very nervous about the outcome of this. He was more nervous than I was. And I realized that because he was nervous, and I'm not saying this from but I realized like I was in control of that conversation because I wasn't nervous. The only thing I was nervous about was how it might impact our relationship or how he saw me, but I wasn't nervous about the outcome of the deal. Does that make sense? No. And so as he was doing this, why this was so important, because at some point in that conversation, then I was able to stop the conversation and say, hey, I just want to check in with you. How are you feeling right now? Hey, what are you most anxious about in our conversation so far? Does that make sense? Now, I was asking this question to a person who's very seasoned in all of this, and I would never have imagined that he would have been anxious or nervous or anything about having this dialogue, but he was. That makes sense? And then just from your perspective, I just want you to hear this, your answers to this. From your perspective, if you were that person, but then I stopped the conversation to check in with you and say, how are you feeling about what we've been talking about so far? And what's the one point of our discussion so far that makes you the most anxious or the most that you're concerned about? how would you feel if I stopped in the middle of a conversation, asked that question, as opposed to just getting through what we need to get done? How do you think that would make you feel?
A better connection, because otherwise you're just thinking you're just ripping through your content or whatever you want to say and not paying attention to him and engaging.
Even though you're not voicing it, I would feel hurt, like, I'm not saying anything, but because of my body language, like, oh, he's picking up on the fact that I'm a little nervous.
Yeah,
When you were doing that, could you feel him as, obviously you could see him, but could you feel his emotion a little bit too?
now it was like pretty stoic, right? Yeah, just pretty like even killed.
I would think the same thing, like there's an energy change.
Yeah, an energy change or an energy.
Yeah, I wasn't really, I knew that I was a little bit nervous going into it, just to have that conversation. I knew that he would be, but I didn't realize that he would be that nervous. Where he's literally rubbing his leg.
I remember being in a situation from his side once, when I was about 10 years into the business, went into a big deal. Went in and sat with a builder, and I was excited to list like 6 or 7 of his brand new, beautiful, massive custom homes. And I had to do it for 10 years, but for whatever reason, that conversation, I felt just like what that guy felt like. I felt nervous, I felt disconnected, I felt frustrated, I was scared, and I knew he felt it based on my body language.
Yeah, yeah. So again, a passive behavior, a pacifying behavior is an indication of the person's lack of comfort in a conversation. Does that make sense? Here's another, just I guess it's not a passive behavior, but just we're on the topic of these conversations, is that I'll save it. So passive behavior. So another thing is, like, if someone does this, they're talking to you and they kind of grab their neck and they just kind of massage your neck, like, hey, so what are you saying again? So anything that's like this, right? This is a pressure point right here on your forehead. This is a pressure point to relieve tension, right here. That's why we do this. We're like, oh my gosh, I got so much to do. You're doing this, right? Another pressure point that relieves tension is in the back of the neck. So that's why we grab our neck and go, oh gosh, like, what am I going to do on this deal? We do this, right? I used to do it to our puppy. Yeah, but the back of our neck is this too. So we kind of will do this. Another pressure point that relieves tension is in our upper lip. And that's why sometimes we'll go, oh shoot. You're touching your upper lip, because this is a pressure point, right, to relieve tension. So again, it's a passive behavior.
Also a temperature point, isn't it?
Yeah, temperature point too, but this is a passive behavior, like a pacifying behavior. Someone goes, oh man, or what are we gonna do on this? So any type of patting, rubbing, rocking back and forth, all of those behaviors are pacifying behaviors that your body just automatically does, that you do unconsciously when you're nervous. And it's important to be able to watch for that. And I'm going to pause right here and just say this, is that you're going to get a lot of information today. And then it's overwhelming because you think, well, how am I going to remember all of that? And you don't need to. I love what Jeff said. He's like, I don't even really pay attention to it, right? Well, you really don't have to, in a way, because you already know what it means. You already have a sense for what these things mean. That's why we misinterpret our friend's behavior when they walk in and give a certain sign or look at us a certain way. We're like, I know that look. That means like you're in trouble, or I don't like you, or something. Does that make sense? So you already know that it's happening, and you already know what it means. Right? It's also why we will miscommunicate with people, that you will misunderstand what someone's trying to convey or what they said, because you will hear it more in the tone of their body language than you will hear it from what they said. They'll say, what you said, you didn't mean it. How do you know that? Well, because, and then you're like, well, I don't know, I can just tell you didn't mean it. Well, how you can say that is because their body was in a position that's how you understood it. That makes sense? So just being aware of these things right? Awareness is always 80% of the work that we need to do on anything in our lives. 80% of it is just awareness. Once we become fully aware of it, then we start navigating the change, and we start navigating towards doing that. And so just that awareness will be enough. And so, but how you really become, like, to start dialing this in, is that in the conversation that we're gonna have today, how you would do this is by identifying just a specific point of body language. For example, you might identify, let's say, the pacifying behavior. And for the next month, this is what I did, and this is what they recommended to do, is just every month, just take a topic or an area and just be aware of it every day. Where did I see pacifying behavior? How was it issued? How was it demonstrated? And then I would start seeing it. That makes sense? And just so that's that. So then you're aware of it, and you're like, hey, and then you can start asking questions when the conversation isn't really that critical. Does that make sense? Like, I do this with my kids. They would be talking, I would see them demonstrate something, and then I'd ask them, hey, when you're talking about this, were you like, yes, I was, how'd you know? Well, because you were doing this. And it just makes sense. Make sense? So pacifying behaviors, it's just good to recognize that, because when people can see that you're concerned about their well-being, about them being fearful, it gives them comfort, so then they're less worried about what's happening, and then they don't have to pacify themselves, and then the conversation can actually shift and become more meaningful. Makes sense? Because when you're nervous and you're hearing information, how many of you have ever been really anxious, like at the hospital or something, your kid broke their arm or something, and you're really nervous, doctor comes in, says all this stuff, and they leave, and you're like, I don't remember what they said. Because you were just anxious, you were so fearful that the worst thing could happen, that they, had this type of break or whatever. And you're more concerned about pacifying yourself, but then all you can say is, well, he said he's gonna live, or whatever. You're like, that's all I can, I gotta go back and ask him. Just because you were not in an emotional state to actually hear the information. And so this is critical, because when someone is pacifying themselves and you can recognize that, they're really not going to hear what you're going to say at a higher level until they feel more calm. Make sense? Any questions on this before we move to the next point? Yeah, did you find that helpful? Yeah. And throughout any of this, anybody on Zoom have any questions? Comments? Grievances? I'm still got a couple, but
I've got several, but I'm not gonna talk about them with you now.
oh, let's do this. I'm gonna back up. Hang on. You already said. Anyway, let's talk about it. So this was something that's just really important to me that I thought was pretty interesting. The understanding, like, what's the most honest part of your body? Like, what part of the body, if you could pick the head, the arms, the legs, like, what of those three sections, what part of the body do you think is really going to tell you what's actually happening with a person and how they're perceiving what's going on?
It depends on the person.
Well,
She wants to say, you're wrong.
Yeah.
so- that's you could say that but we all are wired the same. What I'm saying is you can cover some things and you can't cover some things, right? Like, so there's a little bit of truth to that, but what I didn't realize, and when they said this, it didn't make sense to me, but over time I've realized, like, this is the most important part. But the person's legs and feet tell you more about what they're honestly going through than any other part of the body, because I can mask a straight face, I can mask a tone, I can mask whatever, but man, because if I'm doing these things and I'm masking where I think you can actually see me and understand me, I lose awareness of legs and feet, and then I'm not masking that. Does that make sense? And because fight or flight mode has a role in our lives that we can't really fight, flight, or freeze, that we can't change, it's hard to overcome it. Your legs respond to fight or flight mode, right? Right, that's why we say, oh my gosh, my hands were shaking. Why are your hands shaking? Fight. Oh my gosh, my leg is just shaking. I can't stop my leg from shaking. Fight. And freeze, like, am I gonna be able to hold still and just keep this position, right? So, but nobody says, oh my gosh. But those things will shake. It's not just because they're an appendage, it's because they are the initial fight or flight response. They get, when we go into fight or flight mode, blood leaves our brain, goes right to our extremities to be able to compensate or to adjust to the new environment. Does that make sense? So, but
really
it's like what you said, it does depend. It would depend on the person, if they're aware of it, and if they're controlling it. There's a lot of things that could go on, but naturally, universally, your legs are gonna tell you, and the feet are gonna tell you what's actually happening. Because they're not able to ask it.
And it comes across as like tremors, motion, tapping,
All
moving.
that, position of feet, where your toes are pointed, all of that stuff plays out. Jen Hargrove is a renowned body language expert. She was actually hired when Bill Clinton was testifying. She was hired to watch Bill Clinton to see if he was lying. And she was like, oh, he was lying. She's like 100% he was lying. And so that's where a lot of my coaching came from, was through her and her coaching and her online. She has online events, and I think she came to Tony Robbins once or twice to the Leadership Academy or something like that. But
What was her name?
Jan Hargrove. And so your legs, so we'll go here. Legs and feet. And this is universally, this isn't just what she said. I've also read a couple books by Joe Navarro, who was an expert in body language for the FBI, would watch as there were people being interrogated or whatever. And in hostage negotiation situations. And so I've read a couple of his books, and a lot of it all lines up. So, but here's the thing, our legs and feet determine where we are emotionally. And there are things that we can't, things we can mask, but it's very few, a low percentage of people actually do it. Very uncommon. So let me give you a couple examples. So when your feet are close together, feet close together, convey what happens. What if you think about this? When my feet are close together, and someone would come up and push me, I'd fall over, right? So the closer together my feet are, the more vulnerable I am becoming in this moment. So if you just watch people's feet when you're talking to them, because they're standing up, and I have a story to share you with this, but so, and the opposite of that, the further apart my feet are, then the more determined I am to convey my message. Right? Even standing here today, talking to you, something I just do instinctively, and we all do it. I'm standing up here, and my legs are just further apart because I want to make sure that I'm solid, right? So let me tell you this story, and then we'll kind of go more depth. I was talking to a gentleman who played for the U of U football team years ago, and he was a real estate agent, and I was hoping to get his business. And I had not met him, but he was just a guy that I've been wanting to talk to. And I just happened to come up and was talking to me in our lobby at the time. And as he was talking, literally his feet were far apart, and he was talking, and he was just talking like this. Oh yeah, I did this when I played, and I did this, and blah blah blah. He's just saying all these things. So as I was trying to shift the conversation, and then he started explaining some of the pain points of his life. I watched his feet go from far apart to closer, and then to where he was leaning like this, like he put all his weight on his hip. It wasn't because we were standing there for a long time. It was just, he's just becoming more vulnerable. Does that make sense? And so then as he was talking, he literally put his one foot behind his other foot. So to show you this, I'm kind of like you can see this as we're talking, let's go up, but let's see. I don't know if I'm gonna. Let's do this. Oh. So his 1 foot was like this, and he's talking to me, so he was like this, then he went like this, and then he was like this. Standing on 1 foot with one leg, with his foot behind his other foot, so he looked like this, he was like this. He was talking like this, and I could see his 1 foot worried about, he was like balancing, I'm over exaggerating this, but he was kind of like this. So much so that he just started to lean against the reception desk. And as I'm talking to him, and then once he leans against the reception desk, I'm like, I know he likes me. I know that if I was gonna ask him to work together, all the stuff, at this moment, he's his most, I'm gonna say vulnerable, but not in a bad way, not vulnerable way, but his guard is down and he's very acceptable
Yeah.
to actually making a change, because he's like this and he's leaning against the desk like this. So if you just kind of always have it in the back of your mind when you're talking to somebody, especially in sales, but in the mind, like, how would this look like if I was in, you know, if we were like gunning it out, like that you were gonna fight each other, the more vulnerable the person becomes, then that means they're relating to you. Does that make sense? Like that you're connecting with them in a way that they're more relaxed. Make sense? So a couple other things, and actually I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna put this to my feet just so you guys can, and then maybe, what if I screen share this for a second? And then I'm just gonna show you a couple things. If I did this, and then put this down. How would that happen? Or I go to
Your feet again?
Yeah, if I want to put that up here, the feet up here, is that possible?
I have to shut off the monitor on.
Oh, all right. All right, well, let's just see, I think you guys can see it, so, well. Let's see, how could that happen? Yeah.
You want us to see it in here?
Yeah, just because then they're not gonna see it, but I thought if I did that, but that's all right. We'll do, I'll just.
I might not get it back, you know.
Yeah. So let's just do this. Let's see, if I'm standing here, okay, so this works. So let me just say this, a person's feet, if I'm talking and my feet, if I'm talking to Jeff and both the points of my feet are pointed towards Jeff and he's standing right here talking. My feet are telling anybody else, this is our conversation, don't come talk, don't interrupt. Because both of my feet are pointing towards him. Does that make sense? Now, if my 1 foot was cocked out like this, so my feet look like this, I have 1 foot that's kind of positioned out, like I'm standing like this. That's saying, I'm okay if someone's coming drunk and we're just having fun talking. Make sense? So I had a friend who he was standing and talking to he was a friend that was a broker, and he was talking to one of his agents, a very high profile agent at his brokerage. And as he was talking to him, I knew that he was kind of in a hurry. And I knew that he was in a hurry because when he was talking, he had 1 foot back like this.
Getting ready to escape.
Like, okay. Now, even though he stood there like this, and I watched this, and I just sat and literally I kind of just stood there and watched him for like 7 minutes. He stood like this and talking to him, and then I was watching the agent's response, and I'm like, the agent is like, "Are you for real? Can you just be here for a second?" And he was talking like this, and if I would have just heard him, if I were just here on up, I would have thought he's doing great. But knowing that and then watching the agent's response, him saying what he needed to talk to him and he wanted his full attention, but he felt like he was more concerned about where he had to be than being there with him in the moment. Does that make sense? So now I just want you to understand what's happening in this moment. Let's just say this guy's name, my friend's name is David. David is there trying to really give him the information. Let's say, I don't know, the guy's name is Cody. Cody is feeling that David wants to leave more than he wants to stay and talk to him. So now Cody's responding to what his feet are doing, not what his voice, not the words he's using. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So now it's making David more anxious. That makes sense?
Cause he was kind of caught, like, oh crap.
So now it's just spiraling up, making it more and more work, making it worse. And he's like, no, no, no. And I'm hearing the guy, like, no, no, what I said was, and he's having to repeat himself. All you gotta do is, you know, and he's saying all this stuff. I'm like, dude. It was crazy. So I walk up to after watching him for like 5 minutes of this conversation, I walk up to my friend and put my hand on his shoulder and just said, hey, David, put your feet. I said, put your left foot up by your right foot. I just whispered it to him. You look like you're in a hurry. I walked away. I'm just gonna walk away. Like I thought I'll do that. I walked out. I was kind of watching the window, and then just kind of watching it, not knowing. I don't want them to think I'm a creep or anything, but watching but then I'm watching this, and then I can see it totally shift, and then I know the guy that David's talking to. So then afterwards, I walked up to him, or the next day actually, walked up to him and said, "Hey, you're having that conversation yesterday with David. Tell me about what's happening." He goes, "Yeah, but whatever you said to him, it totally shifted the conversation." That's what he said. And I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything about what they were talking about because we were listening to what we were saying. Or how did you know what to say? I'm like, had nothing to do with what I said. I had nothing. I didn't say. All I said was put your foot on the front. And he goes, "Dude, that changed the whole conversation." Does that make sense? Because it changes his body. David's body goes into a different response when his feet are flat and together, and he's more solid. And the answers you give to him, he's going to feel more certain about what he's saying. Does that make sense? Just super important. And again, telling you all these things, and it can feel overwhelming, but that I'm giving you these indications just because it's important to be aware of it, right? The other thing about the feet, if your feet
Are stinky?
yeah. So if your feet, when you're sitting down or standing up, if your feet, if the person's foot is up in the air, like if it's up, if I'm sitting here and I'm like this, and my foot's just kind of up in the air like this, or I'm standing and I'm kind of like this. You ever see someone stand like where they put their foot up in the air? So if the person is putting their foot up in the air, then something, I don't know, something that they're very excited about, that something they didn't think would happen. Something, I'm gonna use the word like divine, something from heaven is happening, like a miracle is happening in their life, or what's happening feels like a miracle. Because when someone's foot gets pointed up, they are in the thought that God is involved in what's happening in my life right now. This is why we say, I feel like I'm on cloud 9. I feel like I'm walking on clouds, or I feel like I'm walking on it. I walked on air the whole way home. You know, I walked 3 feet above the ground all the way home. You have this phrase because when we feel like something miraculous is happening, our feet will go up. So, and I thought this was kind of like, we went through this and I'm like, is this really true? No lie. I'm standing on the 4th floor of a building one day and I'm watching this guy out in the parking lot having a conversation. I kid you not, he's talking on the phone. I can see him, he's pacing back and forth, just doing this. Now, all of a sudden, I'm just watching this guy because I'm body language. I'm just kind of aware of. And this is where I'm like focusing on the feet. And then I see this guy stop and he's like, goes back on one, and then he puts his foot up like this. And I know this, I happen to know this guy. And he puts his foot up like this. And he's on the phone. And he's literally just doing this like. Okay. So he gets off the conversation, gets down, I'm like, I'm gonna go down and see what's happening. So I just gotta know. And I'm like, what happened? And he goes, dude, was on this conversation about to lose a deal, and all of a sudden the guy just like, he's like, dude, it was like miracle. I said one thing, and he was like, this, the whole deal changed, and he agreed to sign the agreement, and agreed to go through the deal. They weren't gonna back out. Dude, a miracle. Like, no lie. Does that make sense? I was watching this lady being interviewed on television, and she started talking about how God changed her life. And so she's sitting like this, had the skirt on, so her leg is crossed over like this, and her foot is like, you know, it's just coming flat like this. And then every time she mentions God, her foot would go up. Literally, her foot would go like this. She would say, and then that night I got down on my bed and I was praying, and her foot went up. And I was praying to God, I was asking for all this, and then I got this answer. And the next day, and then she talked about God again, and her foot went up, literally, foot goes up. So. Something just to be aware of that. You know, how often are you ever gonna need this on the feet going up? It's something to be aware of, that when it's happening, you can understand, like, it's very meaningful for that person, it's very spiritual for that person. Just an awareness, and just notice it in yourself, that your feet are, they indicate that. Makes sense? So a couple other things about the feet is that we will put our feet where we want to go. So here's another indication of this. I was in there was a big agent that had this team. I say big agent, but he had a big team. And his team coordinator, manager was leaving. And everybody attributed to a lot of his big success over the last couple of years to how effective this person was getting on the team and diving everything. So just so happened, I had a meeting with all this team right before she was, like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before she was in. I didn't work with them, but they agreed to meet with us. And I wanted to sit, and so I was sitting, and he was sitting here, he was sitting like on one side of the table, and she was sitting on the other side of the table, and I wanted to make sure that I was gonna sit on the middle, so I could see both their feet. And I could look underneath, I could see how they were sitting. So what happened was, in that conversation, they were talking about the team, because we're like, what's important for you, and how are you, what do you guys need to see from this perspective, and what's important? Well, every time the team lead would talk, I'm just gonna say David, every time David would talk, his feet would turn towards me, and he would talk. And he would say this, and his feet would get wide. So I realized, like, he does believe that we're having it's really a conversation with me and him. It's not really him, his team. He is gonna be the one making the decision. I know that. It's not really gonna be his team. So he would say something, and then when this team manager, when she would go to add something. So he would say to me, he would talk, and then he would turn back. So now he was facing her, naturally facing her. Does that make sense? Then when she would say, well, can I give you my opinion on that? And would say, yeah. Then she would start talking. He would literally move his legs away from her. So he would spin in his chair. So as he was talking, his legs would be like this towards her. She would start talking. He would do this. But he's spinning in his chair. Spin and do this. I'm like, oh my gosh. They don't get along as well as everybody thinks. Then I thought, he's probably happy she's leaving. And then I watched every time he talked, then I started noticing her legs, and every time he talked, she would just sitting like this. And every time he talked, she would just move over just a little bit like that. And that little shift just in the chair, you wouldn't think anything of it. Like, you're going back and forth in your chair right now. You wouldn't think there's nothing of it. But because I watched it, and then he was talking, and then she would do it, and every time he talked, her chair moved. And her chair really didn't move that much, but it moved every time he spoke. And like, everybody thinks they get along and that she's awesome. I bet he's not happy. Makes sense? So where your feet are pointed, it determines where your focus is. So it's just important for you, for your body language, if you're wanting to communicate something to somebody, that you're not sitting there talking to them, and then your legs, whether I'm gonna get a dress or whatever, but that your legs aren't like perpendicular to them or this, or you're not trying to, that there's a way that you're not just turning your body away from them, because when you turn this away from them, what they feel instinctively is that you want to get out of there. Does that make sense? So, and just as luck would have it, the very next day, I saw this agent. And again, we didn't end up working with him, but I saw this agent downstairs, either the next day or 2 days later, but I think it was the next day. And I said, hey, what are you doing for lunch right now? He's like, I'm not doing lunch. Let's go to lunch real quick. It's like, all right, okay. So we went to lunch. And I asked him, I said, hey, your team's, she's leaving. Are you happy she's leaving? And he goes, who told you? Nobody knew. He goes, who told you? Because nobody knows this. I don't want her, because she's going to another company. I don't want her to feel bad. Who told you? I was like, dude, your body language every time she talked. I was just telling him, he goes, oh my gosh, that is 100% spot on. Nobody knew it, but his body can't lie. Does that make sense? So, we go back to the screen share, pull this back up. Oh, okay. Anybody have any questions at this point? So there's more stuff about the leg I want to talk about. Almost done now. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so let's just do this. So that's why it's important that when you watch the person's leg, that you're matching and mirroring what they're doing, because when you're matching and mirroring what they're doing, they instinctively will know what you're feeling and understanding too. But if you're unconsciously doing something that is opposite of what they're doing, then they're not going to feel connected to you. Make sense? So just want to make sure I'm close enough. Okay, yeah. So the other thing that she said in this class, it was pretty funny, but and I didn't realize this, but she says that your legs or your feet are so important that she actually gave us this quiz, but what she said was that if she was the next time that you go to a wedding reception, she's like, I want you to watch where women put their feet, because where they put their feet is where is the person that they find that they're finding attractive, that they find that they want to be closer to them. She goes, this is why we have this phrase, I'm like, I want to play footsie. What are we talking about? Well, footsie is because it is a real indication of that's where I want to be. I want to be right where you are. We say footsie, like I want my feet to be right where your feet are. And I'm not leaving. Does that make sense? So she said, watch it in a wedding reception. She's like, watch when an attractive lady walks in. Both men and women do this, but she says, watch, because men will pull their socks up when they're talking to someone that's attractive. When they see somebody attractive, they will naturally pull their socks off or pull their socks up. She's like, this is where we get the phrase, she'll knock your socks off. Why we say that is because when a man sees a woman that's attractive, they will automatically want to try to adjust their appearance. And the first thing that they feel physically that's out of alignment is that their socks have come down to their ankles, and they feel like they got to straighten that up and we'll do this. I know you think it's crazy, but just watch. You'll see it happening more and more. And I was really, what do you call it? I was overly conscious about it. But like she goes, you'll just do it unknowing. And I'm like, I thought, really, do I do that? Like, would I really do that? I don't know. 3 days later, after the training, I go in the Chase Bank, and the branch manager comes up, and she's really attractive. And I look and talk to her. I'm like, hey, I'm here. I'm like, oh, I just think that I was doing this. It was a training. Where was she there? But it wasn't. It just instinctively. You just do it. You can't help but do it. Does that make sense? She's like, watch if an attractive lady walks in. If there's a group of guys, she just start watching the guys, and they'll all adjust their socks. Period. Then she says,
It's like when women adjust their hair, and a man walks in.
maybe, yeah,
They do.
they do. They're like, oh, they're looking like they like.
Yeah.
But one thing they'll do, she goes, the next restaurant you go to on a Friday night. She's like, watch where the women put their legs, like where they put their feet. So here's what she said: if you're sitting next to somebody, let's say it's tight quarters, or someone comes that sits by you, and if they cross their leg, where their leg goes on the crossing, that's the person they're more comfortable with. Does that make sense?
Like the direction for their foot.
Yeah. Yeah, so direction. So if they're sitting there and they cross their leg like this, it's because the woman feels more safe with the person on the right side than on the left side. Right, and she's like, watch a couple at dinner. She's like, and if or sitting at a restaurant or wherever, she's like, watch the woman. If her leg is crossed towards the guy, and she's bouncing her foot, she really likes him. And she's like, and if she's dangling her shoe while bouncing her foot, she wants it. Doesn't like him, wants him. She's like, so just watch it. She's like, that's what happened.
If she's what?
Dangling her shoe.
It's not right.
My wife doesn't do any of
I
that.
Right, so like they'll watch it, but they'll put their leg on there, like now, there are always caveats to all of this stuff, meaning. That person, when they say, you know, if you cross your leg, how do you, I always put my left leg over my right.
Yeah.
And if I put my right over my left, it's a little more uncomfortable. However, I will do it if I'm way uncomfortable with who I'm sitting next to on my right. Does that make sense? I won't cross like this with my left leg over, even though it's a little uncomfortable, I'll still do it this way. Now, I may not like this person and I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm more concerned about being comfortable than being that little bit uncomfortable, but if there's a big awareness, like, oh, I don't want this person, I don't want to be in this person's space or this person, whatever, I have this, I'm really trying to, I will cross my right leg over my left, even if it's uncomfortable. Does that make sense? So again, everything is a pattern, and one thing doesn't mean that that's what's happening, it's just an indication that it could be happening. Makes sense? So it's not always the truth, but it's an indication of what could be true. So when you say depend, true. Like the person might just feel more comfortable folding their arms and doing this. And they're like, I don't care who's on either side of me. True, depends. However, it is an indication that it could mean something. Makes sense? So just watch, like if you're having a conversation that's hard with your clients, you're sitting down or you're in a listing presentation, and if the person's feet, as they're sitting in the chair, if it widens and it shouldn't be widening, it's because they're feeling resistance to what you're saying. That makes sense. And if a person's feet were wide as you're talking, and the guy's is, you know, sitting down, his legs kind of far apart, and then he starts to get close together and maybe crosses his legs, it's because they're feeling more comfortable with what you're saying. That makes sense. So it's just important to watch because you don't have to, and then you'll know, like this is when I need to ask a question, or this is when it's most appropriate to bring this up. And or even to acknowledge, not just to acknowledge that they're feeling scared, but to also acknowledge that they're feeling comfortable and saying, so far in our conversation today, we've talked about this, this, and this. And I'd like to check in with you. How are you feeling about what we talked about so far today? Seems like you feel pretty good about it, and I'd like to hear what you. And then when you say that and they see that you say that, they're like, yeah, they're really tracking to me. They can see that I'm actually feeling better about it. It gives them a lot of confidence that you can see and know things that they're not even saying. Right? And what does that convey to them? That if you can see and know things that they're not even saying, and you can do that now, that means how great you would be in a transaction. There's things you're gonna see and know that nobody else can see and know. This makes sense. So let's do this. Let's just stop. We'll take a 10-minute break. So it's 12:01.
Yeah.
Can't believe I'm almost on time. So let's just say 12:10. Then we'll gather back and finish up.
Cool.
If you have any questions, let's come back and start with any questions or situations that you've had on anything we talked about so far.
I'm gonna pause this recording, Ash, I'm gonna pause this recording, so remind me to start again. So what you're saying is, another thing that my contacts with anybody in any work.
It's like,
I just paused it.
oh yeah.
Right. Cool. We're back. Is anybody still downstairs? Bronny, can you see if somebody's downstairs? Let them know we're gonna start again. They may be making some phone calls or something down there. And we're good to go. I'm still screen sharing. Right? Or that shut off when I paused the recording. Okay.
Cool. So let's just start back. Let's see, I had a conversation with Alan during the break. And I wanted to yeah, okay, so let's just start back. Anybody have any questions, any comments, anything they want to start off with?
You guys on Zoom can just unmute yourself if you want. Speak up. Use the chat.
What's that? Okay. Again, feel free to, if you have a question, put it in the chat box or something. Oh, let me see. Is anybody on that?
Ashley's watching the chat.
Okay, you're watching the chat. I'm looking through this, yeah. So sometimes we do things out of habit, like who was it, Kathy said that she's a rocker, like sometimes we do stuff habitually. So that's why it's important to notice, like, are they doing that already when they're not, when they're comfortable? And then if they're already doing it, and then if they're uncomfortable, then rocking isn't necessarily gonna be indication for you that that's happening. Does that make sense? So that's why it's important to kind of get a baseline of the person. Oh, and so then that way you're not misreading it. And anything that you would ever read or think that's happening, I would never take that one thing and then take that as what's actually happening. I would use it as a verifier. I would use it as something just to be curious about and then to verify another question or something else. That makes sense. So this is why it's important. That's why. So we're going to talk about our hands and stuff next, but it's important to notice certain things and to get that baseline so there's not a misreading of it. I was talking to Alma that when you're meeting with someone that's high level, for example, let's say you're presenting and you're nervous about the presenting in front of people, or you're going to a listing appointment or some type of important meeting, appointment of business of some sorts, and you're going to be asking or engaging them at a certain level. Notice how much time you spend on how you're wording things. Right? Did I say that good enough? Does that make sense? Like we think we're writing it down. Well, that's 7% of what you're actually saying. That's 7% of what they're going to understand. What you should also be doing and be very aware of is what is the body language I'm going to use when I walk in there and say those things. How am I going to use my body to convey the message even more? That makes sense? So then when you're saying something, you can actually like put it over the top by, I'm going to say over exaggerating, but by just being intentional about making that movement or putting your body in that situation, or so that it also communicates what you want to say. That makes sense. And I just kind of role played with Alma and Jeff here just on the break. If I was walking, I said if I walked in and I was doing a listing appointment, and I walk in, not even if I might say I want to convey that I feel comfortable, the house has a good vibe to it, I feel good, I might convey that, but how would I do that with my body? And if I walked in and just felt very comfortable and just kind of sat down and just kind of leaned back in the chair a little bit, like, wow. Then I said, wow, your house just has a good feel to it. Right? But then if I came in, I just acted out, but if I came in and sat down very sterile, it's like, your house has a very good feel to it. Like, what is happening right now? What was this person, right? My body language is what I'm communicating. If my feet are close, if I'm, so what you want to say is you want to just make sure that is in alignment. It's okay to know that, and here's why when you're nervous, why it's weird, why it's hard when you're nervous. Because when you're nervous, your body is responding to the nervousness, not the message. Your body language is the nervousness, it's not what you're saying. That makes sense? And what the person feels is and understands is the nervousness. And so if someone's nervous in what they're saying, if they're trying to convey confidence and that they can provide safety and confidence, but their body communicates nervousness, how do you interpret that? Lack of experience, or they're being deceptive.
Or desperation, like their body conveys.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
They wouldn't seem authentic.
Yeah,
It's like it's the miscommunication.
Dude, something's wrong. I can't vibe with this. Something's wrong with this person. Like something they're saying that cancel out something, seems too good to be true. Like something is wrong here. That's why it's so important that when you're nervous, that you get rid of that nervousness so that you can convey the intention, actually what you want to convey. Does that make sense? And honestly, I experienced that just before this class today, for whatever reason. I was telling this right before this class. I was telling Blondie, I'm like, oh my God, I've taught this class so many times. Like, I'm not afraid to be able to, I'm not. I just felt this anxiousness, like I can't explain it. And Bonnie's like, well, you gotta shake it up. I'm like, yeah, and I thought, no, I need to shake it. So I jumped up and down, I walked in, she's like, I'll take your stuff. I'm like, yeah, like.
He literally said, get your ass out of here, go for a walk.
Yeah, yeah, you saw, yeah, I was out there, I kind of jumped up and down, I thought, okay, now I'm gonna focus on something, I'm gonna look at this flower, I'm gonna show you what I did. So I thought, this is weird, like, again, I had no explanation for it, but sometimes I thought, maybe maybe there's something I've forgotten to do today. But I'm gonna get my butt kicked for it, I don't know, but in the back of my mind, but I thought, okay, now that I did that, now I just need to be very present, and I thought, I'm gonna look at this bush, I'm gonna look at this flower, and I take a picture. You know, I'm taking a picture of this flower, and I'm like, I just wanna focus on this flower, like, everything's good, like, it's okay, I'm like, oh yeah, I feel good now. I don't know what that feeling was, but it just like, I couldn't explain it.
It was me getting out of my car in the parking lot, then you felt.
Yeah. It's ready, progress.
It was me. That's funny that you said it, 'cause I saw it coming in and I saw you walking back to the building different.
Okay, it was her coming.
Didn't go.
He made it.
It was just interesting because I saw like, and I was like, that's weird. I've never seen you nervous.
Yeah,
Like I saw you looking at the flowers and then
yeah.
straighten up and head like.
Yeah.
Just like-
It mine.
It was, that's why it caught my eye. It felt like.
the plans out there.
Butterfly,
You're so
No, but seriously, but my point is, because what I thought was, if I come here and I feel nervous, I'm gonna do things that could convey that I'm uncomfortable with what I'm saying, or I'm exaggerating what I'm saying, or whatever, and then you're not gonna hear what I'm saying. And it just happens, like our bodies, you know, we have all this emotion, and sometimes things just show up, like, I don't know why I'm having it, I have no idea, there's nothing that would portray that, except for I have to meet with Braun in an hour. So, no.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I said, is we need to take whatever's going on off.
All right, so, okay, so let's talk about handshakes. I'll go back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna come back to handshakes. We're gonna skip it. Let's see. No, let's do this. So we're gonna talk about handshakes, but we're gonna talk about hands for a minute. So hands convey a lot of things. Historically speaking, from the time of the beginning of time until a couple hundred years ago, still today, but our right hand is our weapon hand. Our right hand's the hand that we held a weapon. Yeah, right. If I had a sword, I'm a gunslinger, it's right-handed, right? And so why we shake hands with the right hand is because what I'm conveying is I do not have a weapon. I'm willing to extend my weapon hand to you, and I'm gonna allow you to grab it. An opportunity to grab and to control my hand that controls my weapon. So that's why we shake hands with the right hand, based upon that alone. Makes sense. So if someone shakes with the left hand, it feels weird. You're like, what's happening? It's not that you can't do it. It's why Boy Scouts, I don't know why Boy Scouts do it. Left hand shake, I'm like, because I can punch you if I hold you. But so why we shake with the right hand is because of that. And that's why it just feels, and that's why a handshake determines a lot of things. A handshake determines a lot of things, and a person. How long do you think it takes for someone to have a first impression of somebody?
Like seconds, right?
Yeah, it's under 7 seconds. There's actually studies that show that in 0.2 seconds. Or I'm sorry, 0.3 seconds, the person has already made up their mind. 0.3. You know what percentage of people actually change their opinion, their first impression opinion? You know, so first impression, so 7 seconds, right? 7 seconds is the longest. Only 24% of the people are willing to change a first impression. Only 24%. 76% of the time, people go with their first impression, even if what follows goes against the first impression. They're like, nah, I knew it from the beginning. you have something to say?
I was gonna say, it's really awkward asking for a redo on a handshake.
Actually, it's not, we can talk about
I've done it.
it, so we're gonna talk about how.
Can I have another handshake?
Yeah.
I just like don't sound a
You
little
could
bit
laugh
like,
about
okay,
it.
well, that's happened once or twice because they grabbed you early.
Right,
Yeah.
so we're gonna talk about this. So,
That's where.
we know this, right, a handshake. We've all had these handshakes where they go awkwardly, right, when fish,
Oh, yeah.
whatever, or if your hand's clamming, like. Wipe your hand, right, you don't wanna have that. So. Right, when the handshake, let's just go through this real quick. If I'm grabbing too early, you know what that indicates? I'm nervous.
Nervous, yeah.
So when someone grabs you early, what you need to know is they're awkward and nervous about what's happening right now. That's what happens. That's what you just need to know. Okay, and if someone's awkward and nervous, and they grab it, then at that point, it's very, you know, it's put upon you then to make them feel comfortable. And so when they do that, how you can adjust for that is to acknowledge that it didn't feel well, didn't feel good. Right? I'm telling you, it works every time. And Jan Harper was one that we had to practice this. But when she said it, I'm like, I felt so comfortable after she taught us this. I thought this is exactly like, and I've only done it a couple of times, but it works every time. So if I were to shake your hand and it doesn't, and it didn't feel good, I just acknowledge it. So if I shook Jeff's hand and it didn't feel good, I would say, I don't like how that felt. Can we do that again? I didn't feel comfortable with how that went, how that felt. And I'm sure you didn't either. I'm gonna do that again. Can we try that one more time? So if you acknowledge, because do you think they felt comfortable? Now what do they think? Oh, shoot, I did it again. I got
You know, it's weird that you thought it was okay.
Yeah.
You didn't say anything.
Yeah, and then if you don't acknowledge it, you know what they're gonna say? You know what they think automatically? They think, if you're gonna allow me to do something that feels this uncomfortable and make me so in my head right now, and we don't fix it, I can't trust you moving forward. That's the message you're getting. Right, but if you just grab their hand without saying it and say, let's do that, and you're already saying, doing that again. So here's what it would look like. They have the awkward shake. In that moment, you just have to say in that moment, hey, so the handshake goes really fast. Jeff, just role play this with me. The handshake goes really fast. Got hurt my hand early, and I go, oh, and then because it's gonna happen like this. Hey, I'm Louie, Jeff. I'm like, oh, hey, I didn't like how that felt. Can we do that again? It just feels uncomfortable. Like I'm saying it right then. I'm not like holding their hand hostage.
Like 10 minutes later.
You may do that, but like in that moment, they're gonna do it, and then it's hard to roll it, but when that happens, I just say, hey, Jeff, I don't like how, I felt uncomfortable with the handshake.
Just pull them in tight and just rub their hand.
Yeah. But I didn't get them to make it, no, but you just say it in the moment, hey, that didn't feel comfortable to me, can we do that again? That didn't feel comfortable to me, I bet it didn't feel comfortable for you either.
It's like if you go to
Let's
get
do
a
that.
high five.
Oh, yeah.
You need to say.
You can't just hit the corners of the body. You gotta do
That makes sense, like, you gotta say it in that moment, but if you wait 10 seconds,
It's gonna make it awkward.
now it's just.
I like how she said it too. Let's do a redo, you know.
Yeah, and if you just made it casual, you don't have to make it, you can say, oh man, redo on a handshake, I don't, like, let's do that again. I must have messed that up, but you own it, even though it's probably done, like, I must have messed that up, let's redo on a handshake. So there's no more awkward, and now they know that I'm not gonna allow you to do something that is awkward, weird, or anything, without, I'm gonna give you the chance to redo it. That makes sense. It conveys a lot of things if you do that.
All right, here's something on that. Cause this has happened to me more than once, where you go in for the second and it's just as weird as the first.
Oh.
Really promise, now we gotta correct.
Oh.
So a couple things could be happening, One. They didn't want to have a second handshake, you initiated it, and now they're having to do it again, and they don't like it.
Relationship over.
Does that make sense? Like, I don't like, dude, I didn't want to shake your hand the first time, and if you didn't get that, you're asking it again. That's why it's important to like, you correct it in that moment. That makes sense?
Yep.
Hey, Liz, can we have a redo on that handshake? I wanna make sure we both feel comfortable in all our, and everything that we do here today. I just don't feel comfortable in it, like, just, or, you know, however, right? Depending on the professionalism, it's gonna change depending on the person, right? But just acknowledging it is important, and not acknowledging it is worse. So, and any effort of acknowledging it in the moment, 10 minutes later, 20 seconds later, it's awkward.
So don't say like, you suck at handshaking, don't say that to them.
Yeah, don't do that, that's the point, yeah. But that's just super important. Your hands also convey, there's what is called, your hands also convey sincerity. Your hands also convey interest or passion about what you're talking about. They did a study of the top TED Talk videos that were viewed. All TED Talk videos that had more, had at least 450 hand gestures, indicated that that would be a top viewed video, regardless of content.
Huh.
Every
You're gonna see me doing that.
Every TED Talk that had 250 or less never hit top of the chart.
Wow.
Because hands convey passion. But hands convey integrity. Hands, when you can see a person's hand, because see, this is my weapon hand. When you can see the person's hands and how they're putting their hands, it conveys a lot of meaning to it. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
True story. So I'm talking to a group of real estate agents about this. And this agent said, let me ask you this. I had a situation happen. This was in the fall. It's like years ago, but this is what he said. I had someone that was very interested in seeing a house buyer. They contacted, and he said, on my way, when I got there, I was standing outside and I realized that I didn't have my coat, my jacket, and it was cold. And I wanted to be out there waiting for them, not like in my car. So when I was out there waiting for them, I had my hands in my pocket. They get out of the car and they said, are you Justin? He's like, yes, I am. He said, they asked a couple questions and they said, okay, and they got in the car and drove away. Right now, you might not think there's anything about this, but what happened was they actually went and contacted another agent, signed a buyer agreement with them, and then bought that house that he was going to show them. Because here's why. When your hands are in your pocket, it conveys you're concealing something. And if I don't know you and I walk up to you like this, hey, what's up? I can be nice, hey, what's up? And I'm walking to you like this, and that's how he was doing it. He goes, I said, what'd you, I go, do what you did. And they said, they got out of the car, I said, hey, I'm Justin. I'm like, their hands out. Like, have to be out, like, all that conveyed for them, early morning, like, what's happening? I'm sorry, it was in the evening. 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening, kind of dark. They're like, I got a guy, this guy got hands in his pockets. Literally, that's what happened. That makes sense? So that's why it's important that people can see your hands. That's why the videos are viewed, because when you can see my hands, you know that I'm not doing anything behind the scenes. I'm not. There's no trickery. I'm not anything. You can see my hands. That makes sense?
Mhm.
So there's a hand position called steepling. That's this. This is steepling. Anything where your hands come together and create like a steeple. Okay. So when your hands come together like this, it means I'm conveying something that I really believe. This is what we say, I'm begging you, please, I'm begging you. You're like, you're not doing this like you're praying. You're doing this because you're saying, I am so sincere right now. I'm just begging you, will you please just let me go this one time. We instinctively know to do this. Does that make sense? And so, and if I do this when I'm talking and my hands are together and I'm like, I just want to tell you something that's super important to me. My hands are together, it's conveying sincerity, authenticity, like truthfulness. At least I believe it to be true. that make sense? And what I loved about this is that she said in this training, I remember a lot of things she said, but she said, watch politicians, because especially when they're lying, they're doing this, and it can seem out of rhythm. They'll do this, like, why is this guy doing this? It doesn't even seem like it's on the point that he's trying to make. It's like this, not on the point he's trying to make. He's just doing this. Because they're coached. If you do this, it means you're sincere and you're trying to be emphatic. It's like exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I am trying to convey to you to do something now. There's no rhythm to it. That makes sense. So she's like, just watch it. No, she's like, that's how you can tell they're totally out of integrity, because it just looks like they're like, which they are. Just kidding. Does that make sense? So she's like, just watch that. So, and then you can counteract it. Right? She said that when Bill Clinton was talking, a couple things that he would do. One, he would grab, because when you lie, you will move, you'll make a hand gesture with your left hand when you're lying. You'll touch your face, you'll do something like this. And she's like, I can tell someone who's lying is if when they're about to say something, they grab the chair. Because they know this. Because if their hand touches the face, it's an indication that they're lying. So they'll grab the chair and say, hold on to the chair while you say what you're about to say, because you would naturally just want to do this. Natural limitations. So they'll grab the chair. So she's like, so when I watch them grab the chair, when I watch them do this, all these things, too many things lined up. It wouldn't be, 9 out of 10. It would be, she's like, I can't take that as truth until I can validate what I think. That makes sense. Because your body, and if you think about what a lie detector test is, they get a baseline of your body's rhythm, heart rate, breathing, all of it, blood pressure, all of it. They ask you all these questions that are just truthful. What's your age? What's your name? What's this? They get a baseline. Then they start asking you questions that and you can't stop it. Except for you're a psychopath. You don't, but does that make sense? So it's just important that, and see, I naturally want to do this. It's just important that you watch your hands when what you're conveying, because it means so many things. Makes sense? So the other thing about hands, she's talking about that, she often gets called to watch testimonies in the jury. And she says, when the person was swearing in, you know what happens when you swear in, right? You put your left hand on the Bible, put your right hand up, and then you swear in. She said, I can tell by how they're holding their right hand if they're going to tell the truth or not. It's an indication. Not always, not always correct, but it is a very powerful indication. So here's what she said. If a person holds their hand up, they're swearing in, and their hand is like this. It's like, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna bend the truth, I'm gonna tell you whatever I want to tell you. I don't know, I shouldn't even be up here. You gotta tell you what you want to hear, I'm getting down. Right? She's like, and if the person is doing this, or far apart, or just totally this, she's like, they're scared out of their pants, like they're scared to death, but they're gonna sing like a canary. You ask them any question, I'm just gonna tell you right now. Right? I'm just relaxed, I just want to get off here, I'm just gonna tell you whatever you want to hear. This, if they're doing this, their hand is back like this, the hand is back like this, right? So if it's back, tilted back, it's like, I'm gonna bend the truth, I'm gonna say what I want to say. I'm gonna tell you whatever I think I need you, what I think you need to know, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it the way that I think you need to know it. I'm not gonna say it just how it is. I'm gonna say it the way I think you need to know it. Does that make sense?
We've got a question on Zoom. They said, if we are a communicator that uses hands a lot, what does that say about us? We're passionate about speaking, or we're a liar? Kidding aside, I'm curious about that.
That's a great question. Just that you're passionate, right? Italians use their hands, right? Greeks use a lot of Greeks use their hand, that kind of. So it just means that you're passionate, you're animated about what's happening. So that you love sharing what you're sharing. You're not worried about how you see me, but I wanna convey to you the passion, the energy, the enthusiasm that I have for what I'm talking about. That's why when they use their hands, watch Simon Sinek, but that's why they say Simon Sinek's videos are always, no matter the quality of the content, they're always high because he does this a lot. He's using his hands. He's like, how could you possibly do this? And he's always making some type of hand motion just because now and why we love it is because that his hand motions, those motions are communicating something more than just the words. Does that make sense? So that's why it's viewed, because you get more out of it. But if I'm standing here, this is the next thing you're gonna want to do, and I'm saying it just like I would normally say it. And you want to watch the person's hands, without the hand gestures, it's less engaging. You're like, is he saying everything, or is he just trying to get done with what he wants to say? Does this make sense? So a couple other things. When you touch your face with your right hand, or so left hand, again, left hand, if I'm telling a lie, my left hand will move and I'll touch my face. Or if I'm exaggerating something, it's potentially I'll do this or something. Now, if I'm sweating, like I'm kind of sweating and I did this, then like that doesn't, I wouldn't use that. I would look at like, oh yeah, he's probably sweating. Or if I had an itch and I did this, I would say, well, I'm not gonna think that the person's lying. But if every time I asked them a question where they had a chance to tell me something that could be right or left, and then they scratched and they did it 4 times, I'm like, either they have a rash, either there's a mosquito bite or something, and there's no visible, and they keep doing that. I'm like, I think they're lying. That makes sense. Or if they do that, then they don't look me in the eye, but they don't, then I'm thinking, I don't think they're telling me everything. I'm automatically just thinking, does that make sense? It's kind of funny because every time I say this, no lie, see I'm touching my face. Like, I'm like, but every time I'll talk about this, I'll worry if someone's thinking I'm saying what is true, and then I will actually do what conveys that I'm not doing. I'm like, dude, I just did that freaking like I'm like, it's like, but that's the case of this is why it's so important that we monitor or that we control our mindset, because our mind goes where we fear the most. And if I'm afraid that they think I'm lying, then I'm going to convey that and do that. Because that's what I'm most afraid of. I will just subconsciously do it. Does that make sense? It's crazy.
And they subconsciously will receive it.
Yeah, and that's how they'll do it. Like, dude, he's not, I don't know what he's saying. I'm like, what's that matter? Why was I afraid of it? That's why I kind of in my head, I have to kind of say to myself in certain conversations that are high, that are very emotional or very critical, I'll kind of walk in going, I do not care what happens. I don't care what happens. I don't care what happens. Meaning I'm not attached to the outcome. I just want to get it done. I'm not attached to what's happening. I just want to get it done. Because if I really, really care, then the more that I really care, the more I'm worried about the outcome, then my fear can grow equally. But what if I'm just like, just whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. And that's what I want to do. Then I wouldn't actually fall for that and do what I'm most afraid of doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's why, again, they're not 100% bulletproof. All of this is just an indication of what could be happening.
I tend to smirk a little bit when I think about.
Yeah.
That they think that I might be lying. And then if they mention anything about it, it makes me kind of smile even more.
Yes.
And it makes it worse, it makes it worse, it makes it worse.
Yeah.
And I cannot stop once I start.
Yeah.
Slippery slope.
Yeah.
Girl-
What'd you say?
I was gonna say, like, girlfriends, it's horrible.
Yeah, I love you, baby.
They say, you're just saying that, like, no, I'm really not.
In-laws.
So that's why it's important, just in doing that you do something else that would counteract it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we talk about Ann Cudney, when she talks about doing the power poses, that the chemical composition of your blood changes after doing this for 2 minutes. If they were to test you before and test you after, you have less cortisol, like higher, oxytocin, all of the stuff comes in a higher level that builds confidence if we just do this for 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes. 2-3 minutes, and literally the chemical composition of your blood changes, right? So they did a study where they had 40 people, and they did this a number of times, but they had 40 students. They had a group of, I think, 4 judges. And they had 40 people, 20 that did a power pose before the interview, and 20 that did not. They did this a number of times. All of the judges, I think with just like a less than a 0.5% exception, when they went to pick who were the 20 people that they were gonna pick, everybody who did the power pose with a 0.5% of a exception, they picked all the people that did the power pose before.
Wow.
And their qualifications were equal, they're all graduate students from MIT, all of them. Top of the class. And they picked everybody who did this for 3 minutes before the interview. Changes you. It changes the rest of the body, and why they said they just seem more competent, more confident, and that they knew. They're all A students. That makes sense? It just changes. So the body language, so doing this sends a different chemical response to your body, then your body sits up a little taller, does this, does that, and then pretty soon, now you're conveying it. Then just like when you said, I do this, then it just keeps on spiraling. I promise I'm not, I promise. Well, there's the opposite effect too. You do the opposite, it just keeps on building. That makes sense?
So body language, whether it's seen by them or not, also has a lasting effect.
100%.
That's why Tony Robbins, before he goes on stage, he does this whole thing, right? He makes it
Yeah,
move.
makes it move,
dance
does
and
thing,
jumps
does the
around.
mantra, all that stuff. That's why I'm going to say, you need to shake that out. And I'm like,
That's all like, you'll make it look Louie.
yeah. And I wasn't peeing in the flower bush, just FYI. But like, does that make sense? So just, that's why it's just so important, right? And if you see somebody nervous and they are nervous, it's really important to say, like, honestly, to stop the conversation, pause it, have them do something. Like, hey, I just think you're really nervous. And it might sound ridiculous. You're like, I'm asking my potential client to stand up. Like, yeah, because you want them in their best. Like, because I care about you, and I can tell you're nervous. Sometimes it helps me to stand up just to shake it out. If you'd like to stand up and just do this for just a minute, just stand up like 10 seconds. Even if you stood up and just did that, and then let's sit back down, let's talk again so you don't feel so nervous. Okay, and then if they can do that, and then re-engage it, it's just a different situation. Does that make sense? And what happens is what people care about is that you care, right? That's where the phrase comes, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
So when you are caring for them, their physical presence, then they know you're caring about them and everything that they're doing. Make sense? Like it sends a message to them that you're not just here for the deal, you're here for them. You're not just here to try to win the deal, you're here for them. Right?
All the best presentations that I've seen in conferences from individuals are the ones that have the audience stand up and stretch and feel energy and all of that before they start talking.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, because it's a psychological.
The re-engages.
Yeah, re-engage it, but psychologically just re-engage it, and then, but it speaks, also speaks. That that the person presenting understands the audience. Right, and I'm like, yeah, I did need to stand and stretch. I'm so glad he was like, yeah, everybody stand and stretch, take a minute break, even though it's not on schedule, let's do it. Like, wow, it felt good. Makes sense? So we're at time, okay. So again, if it's over the top, a couple things, if they're shaking your hand and then if you had someone shake your hand and then they turn it so they're kind of like on top.
Yes.
Yeah.
They kind of just turn it, I mean, it could be a slight, it's not like this, it's just a little bit. What they're conveying is, I'm in control of this conversation. When they shake too hard and they make it over and they kind of do this, that's what they're trying to convey, like, and you automatically, how does it make you feel?
Like he's an a-hole. Yeah, for real.
But you automatically feel threatened a little bit, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's weird, why shoot my hand so freaking
Yeah,
out?
freaking hurt.
They're trying to be dominant.
Yeah.
Control the handshake, not twist it.
Yeah.
Those people, when they do that, I instinctively grab, like with my other hand, and put it over theirs. I
And
get that, but here's where I'm at.
that's exactly what you should do. is that you should turn it back and just say, I just want to correct this.
Can I tell a quick story about that, just really fast, as a participating member of your audience? So,
This is still before a live studio. Go ahead.
so it was 6 years ago, this guy walked up to me, he owned a pavement company, and he wanted to pave my driveway. So this is 6 years ago, I only know this, but I'll share with you why I know this, so that he wanted to pave my driveway, so he came in like that. And he said, hey, I'm with such and such, we have extra stuff over here, and I wanted to talk to you about getting a discount on this, because we have extra material, I can pave your driveway. So he comes into me like this, and he just goes like this, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And he brought me down and over, and almost threw me off of balance, it was really hard, it was harder than that, it hurt my hand. And I was like, immediately, I was just like, you're an ass, dude, leave me alone. It was very aggressive, right? So he just came back last week with one of his salesmen and had his salesman greet me at the door, because he knew and I knew that our interaction was not positive because of the way he approached me. So he sat in the truck and had his salesman come and approach me, which was a really nice guy and had a fake English accent. And he was really kind and considerate and knew body language and knew distances and stuff like that. But the second I saw that guy sitting in the truck, I knew who he actually was. And why he had his guy approach me is because he had this this demeanor and this interaction with me that was not
He
positive.
had to get a body double because he couldn't control it.
Right.
He's like, I'm gonna do it
I
again.
know, that's what I was thinking, like, what if,
Yeah, so, and I love that you bring this up, because kind of going back to your point, when you said it depends. Someone's a bricklayer and they shake my hand, I'm gonna give a lot of grace for that, because they're a bricklayer. When they grab my hand, it's gonna feel rough, callous, and just like, I gotta hold on to it, and it's gonna be strong, and it's gonna be, but if someone is not a bricklayer, right, and they're not that, and then I feel that, I'm like, hey, this is different. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
Yeah, he may not have even been intending to be an
no,
a-hole.
he may not have been, but
That's how I felt.
that's right, so you can't,
His
that's
natural
what I'm saying.
state just came
But
out.
notice,
Yep.
like, when I bring this up, then notice, I bring this up, you're like, well, maybe, yeah, he may not have intended. But you're still going off your first impression, you're like, no, he was. In fact, so much so, even a year later, I don't even trust you. Right?
6 years.
Oh, 6 years,
Yeah,
that's right,
6
sorry,
years.
6 years.
Yeah.
Don't screw with Al, my Does that make sense? Like, that's how determined we are to stick to our initial impression. Right, but I love that you said, oh yeah, maybe that is true.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to say, there's gotta be another indication, right? One, you may not go off of, but because you have to make the decision in that moment. If the guy shook my head and put me off balance, I'm like, dude, if you're gonna put me off balance, I don't know what you're gonna ask me to do.
Right, yeah.
If you're that unaware of what you're doing, forget it, I don't wanna deal with you.
Yeah.
Honest, a-hole or not, you're just not aware, I don't wanna work with you.
Well, it also conveys, in my opinion anyway, that it's all about him.
Right.
You
That's
know,
interesting.
Right,
the objective of our meet or whatever, it's about me. Right, because he's not empathizing, he's not trying to show you comfort or acceptance or meeting the same ground or whatever, so that's why I would take that too.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
so, and this is why just a few things that if we just are aware of a couple of little things that we start doing, this class today, the purpose of the class isn't really it's never going to give you enough information, like, it's never gonna be enough to where you say, oh, I took this one class, now I understand it. But it's enough to kind of give you an indication of awareness around what you do. And then to be aware of that, and then to start maybe shifting it a little bit and thinking, wow, this didn't go well. What was my body? How was my body when I was having this conversation? Does that make sense? So that's why it's so important. That's why also, I was watching this study, I was reading a study where we're talking about how cell phones. And so I'm saying this might sound a little controversial, but like, or judgmental, I guess, but you know, our world, right? More people are being more, you know, we're more sensitive about things than we were 20 years ago or 30 years ago, right? People get offended. Would you all agree? Like, people get offended a lot easier today than what they did 20 years ago.
Only because they're being told to be offended.
Don't tell me what to do. But one of the key reasons is the study is because if I'm doing this. And I'm like this, I'm in a weaker state. I feel weaker. It's a posture thing. I'm weaker. And then I think, wow, you'd bring that up to me right now in this moment. I can't believe you, Jeff. I feel weak. I am in the physiology that promotes a psychology of weakness. That makes sense?
Yes.
Of vulnerability. Then you bring up a tough conversation where I'm like this, how dare you? A-hole, you know, but that's part of it is because our physiology isn't promoting a mindset. I mean, if this is power posing, body language, and this conveys this universally, this is what this conveys. Cross culture, you gotta understand, like cross culture, this is what this conveys. Well, if I'm sitting like this, or I'm at a desk all day and I'm doing this, I'm in a situation where I'm promoting something that I don't even know I'm promoting it. Kind of like what you said, I can't stop smiling, I'm smiling more, and just keeps on perpetuating. Like it's hard to overcome that if we're not actively trying to overcome it. Does that make sense? To change our physiology. We got 5 minutes. Any questions? I have a couple of things, just little tidbits I would share with you.
I was curious about the shaking. When people are shaking, is it nervousness? What is it?
Yeah, just nervousness, yeah. So, I put on here too soft, right? Too soft. All of that just conveys, if it's too soft or too shaky or too, too soft, too shaky, too hard, over the top, lit fish or early grab, all of those things indicate something feels off. And if it doesn't get corrected or acknowledged in some way, then it can lead to something else. It can lead to like the conversation not going as effectively as it should. If someone's hand was shaking, they were shaking when they did it, we should ask, I would ask them. Right after the handshake, I would say, I noticed when we shook hands, you're a little shaky. Are you okay?
I was just cold.
Yeah. It's cold. But so it's just important to acknowledge the quality of that and then to really acknowledge that. Or even if it's a good handshake, I'd say, I love how you shook my hand. Because what does it mean if they're doing it and it feels good? It means that they feel safe, confident, they're ready, there's nothing holding them back. They're gonna have a conversation with you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, and if you do the handshake and you're overextending, like you're kind of reaching out, the handshake should be right here and then just out like 45. It shouldn't be more than that. Then it feels awkward. Does that make sense? I shouldn't have to lean into it. I shouldn't be like, it should just be like this. And it should just stay right here. And it's like 3 pumps. Right? Just like that. If you notice, the other thing I say about handshakes, if you watch the presidential debate when it was Mitt Romney and Obama, they shook hands, right? And then if you put your hand, who brought this up? You said you put your hand on top of it, that conveys care. Doesn't just, if I shake your hand, you're like, oh, you're the mom of Jason or whatever, and I'm shaking your hand like this. This conveys like, I really care about you. I want to make sure you're okay.
Is that the over the top one or is that?
No, that's this double.
Okay,
Like
double.
I'm shaking their hand and I put my hand with their hand. So I'm holding their hand like this. So I'm holding it, if I was holding it like they're shaking their hand and I said, so you're Jason's mom, good to meet you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but if my hand, if you notice this, you go back and watch, it's pretty funny, but my hand goes up the forearm. It means I'm trying to control it, like Jeff, come back up here. So if I take Jeff's hand and I do this, like, oh, so you're Ashley's dad, good to meet you. This just means I'm really, I like her, I'm happy, I like my relationship with her, she's a good person, I want you to know that. But so if I put my hand above here and I'm shaking hands, this means if you ever have somebody do this once, how are you doing?
Yeah.
This is I'm controlling you, even if it's soft, like how are you doing? But watch Obama and Mitt Romney, they do this, he goes to this, and then Obama goes up, Mitt Romney does this. And that's. They're both like this, shaking hands like this. Because
Each other.
you would never get the highest position in the domino. Watch it. We watch the videos. I'm like, that's a lot. They don't go shoot, they go up all the way up to the neck. They're like, I'm choking you. So whoever, does that make sense? So that's just an indication. So
Yeah.
this is trying to control. This is, I love you. This is like, I'm just trying to control you. But that person will go there. It's just fascinating to
And
watch.
then the over the top one is just kind of like when people come in over the top.
Well, then the opposite would be the too soft. I would think that'd be like insecure,
Yeah.
not confident.
They don't really know what they want. They're
Not
wondering.
sure what they're doing.
What if they pat you on the shoulder, on the back or something? Like, have you ever had somebody really shake your hand and then kind of touch you on the back? No, it's
Yeah,
not
how do you think you feel?
weird.
Yeah, so, that's right. So just notice, here's how. The right answer almost is always, just notice how it made you feel.
Yeah,
Like, that's weird, because they were awkward.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, why
that
are you
makes
touching me?
So, but if they're patting you. The patting and rubbing is a sign of like, I'm uncomfortable, I'm trying to soothe it, trying to make, I don't like it. Like, you notice when guys hug, they'll pat, you know what, they don't like hugging. So here's what they're doing, they're patting each other, they don't have to feel hugging each other. They don't have to feel that their chests are touching, so they're patting each other.
That's right.
So like, I'm gonna focus more on this. Than just hugging, and women, just hug, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if someone's padding, it's because they're very uncomfortable and they don't know how to do it. They
My
want you
older
to focus,
brother, man.
they want you to focus on
So
the padding,
physical touch.
not what's actually happening.
Welts on your back.
Makes
Yeah,
sense?
he's, hey, bro, you're like, whoa, jeez, bro.
Yeah, exactly. All right,
Just a hug.
so 1 o'clock on the dot.
All right.
Again, there's two books. Jan Hargrove wrote a book. Jan Hargrove,
Jan or Jen?
Jan, Jan.
Jan.
Yep, Jan Hargrove. And the other one is Joe Navarro. I should have these on here, but. Yeah, we
Did you want to touch on any of
No,
this?
we talked, I just talked about it without. Go. Joe Navarro also does another one that he's the FBI guy that, so anyway. Anybody want to share just what they took away from it? What was one thing that they? You're walking out of here, here's one thing I'm gonna focus, here's one thing I wanna watch or notice.
I'm gonna watch these,
Speed, perfect. Perfect,
whenever you're talking about that.
yeah. Anybody else? What's something you wanna, that made you think like, I wanna watch this or be aware of this?
So I actually, go ahead.
There you go. There you go.
So I just had a thought that, when you said 24%, so 0.3 to 7 seconds is the first impression. Which means only 24% are willing to change their opinion. I had the opposite thought of if you actually have a good first impression, you still have 24% chance for them to change their mind.
Yeah, correct, yeah, that's what, yeah.
You pessimist.
I'm not, no,
Always find it.
not,
You're analytical, huh?
it was just an interesting thought.
No, that's analytical.
He's not.
Anybody on Zoom?
Oh, we said, did I learn this from 3 key elements? I did not, I did a, Jan Hargrove, I took her class a couple of times, and Joe Navarro, he does a class, I've read his book a couple of times. And there's a couple other people I've taken classes from, but those were the ones that I really would go back to my notes on, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So,
because I went to
if
one of
you
his
don't- make sure you sign
presentations
in
and he talked
again, that you sign in and out, I need to have that.
The link should be.
Hargrove, H-A-R, sorry,
Gee,
yeah, Hargrove, H-A-R-G-R-A-V-E, Hargrave, sorry,
Great.
Grave, yeah, I say Hargrove, Hargrave, yeah. So,
Okay, so, awesome, Louie. That was really good. I also was gonna concentrate more on legs and feet. I hadn't even really thought about that before. I don't pay attention. People look at my feet, but I don't pay attention to most people's feet.
You have nice feet.
Thank you. And then, Alma's story, and then what you said, I wrote down to be conscious about how can I use my body language to convey the intent that I want to, like being purposeful about it. Because what I heard from Alma's thing is it was a while ago, newer agents and builder, 6 listings, 7 listings, whatever, and you were fidgeting and you were nervous. in my opinion, hearing that, you probably had. I gotta get this, I wanna close this, I wanna be good, you know, I can do this. But I want them to understand that I can do this,
Yeah.
right? So you're thinking about the outcome and the expectation of getting the listings so much that you're not present.
Yeah.
Like you said, just let it go. Let go of the outcome, just be present, be part of the conversation, let it go. If you said, hey, if I just do a good job and I'm comfortable and if my body language is proper, then they're gonna trust me and I'll get the listings. Instead of thinking so much about getting the listings and everything, it's like your body language went all the shit,
Right.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I was not, I was not seeking to serve them, I was seeking to fill my pockets with the money that all of those multi-million-dollar.
But you know what,
Yeah.
in our industry, that's common, right? That's common, that is why we're there.
Yeah.
But we want them to feel like we're there to accomplish their objectives, not ours.
Yeah,
And in turn, we tend to accomplish ours.
I didn't
right?
have a servant's heart, yeah.
Yeah. And then my third takeaway is this is Ian's new pre-date pose. You just see him in the parking lot or.
Not just stretching.
Yeah, just stretch.
Okay, awesome.
The hands closed or open, does it matter?
Either way, yeah.
And if you don't like standing like this, have you guys know what the Superman pose is? That's the one.
Yeah, more back like that. Yeah,
Oh,
it's kind of a posture thing either way, right? Just like stand tall, straight, good posture instead of the opposite of what Louie was talking about, the hunch is very, you know, low energy.
Just
too.
walk around like Jeff, then you'll get.
Ugh. So we have a sponsor here today. You guys that are still on Zoom, hang out with us for one more second. Janet, come on up here. Janet Allen is our lunch sponsor. We're gonna have lunch here and network a little bit. Janet is at your new company is.
go to the next.
Oh, yeah, I got a slide for that. Never mind. Oh, am I not sharing anymore?
Oh, no, I took it off, Jeff, sorry.
Louie, you're not in charge of the. I'm just kidding. Okay, let's. Okay, there it is, factory flooring. The reason I didn't remember the name is because I met Janet when she was at a different flooring company, and the name to me was irrelevant because we did a deal, you did some carpet for my own home. And there was a mix up in the, you know, between, there's communication between the estimators, the installers and this and that, but I had Janet. Right, so to me, it's always the rep. Whether it's my home warranty or it's my title or whatever, it's who am I dealing with? And so. That previous company she was at is irrelevant to me because I have my carpet gal. Yeah, Janet, so come on up here to introduce yourself better.
Thank you.
That was comfortable, so no backslide. Tell us a little bit about yourself. There's a QR code so you can connect with her. And yeah, let them know how you can help them in their business too. I know you got some cool realtor relations stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so as I was walking in here, because yes, I just changed companies, so I'm with Factory Flooring Direct now. We are opening a new place in Draper within the next couple months. So I've been in the business 25 years. I was with the other company for 25 years. And I just am so excited. I love the flooring industry. And to me, it is kind of similar to real estate, to mortgage, to things like that, because it's all about relations. Like, did he just prove that right there? So those are the stories that I love. I love when people call me from 10 years ago and just say, hey, you're my gal. And I mean, so we developed a program for realtors. And if your mortgage or something else, talk to me and we'll make a deal because you're here. We'll figure it out. We'll put you on the same program. So I'm gonna pass these out. And whoever signs up on the QR code first gets a prize. So it's just a register. You just register free for this realtor program. And what you're going to get is you're gonna get me. I'm gonna help any clients. You're gonna just pass them right on. And I'm gonna help them do their bids, do their measuring, all of that. But you've got somebody in your back pocket, somebody that you can just go ahead and turn over your client and they're taken care of. So we're gonna give your clients 10% on their entire invoice. So we're talking tearing out carpet, the material, installation, everything. And then we want you to try it. So on your own personal home, you're gonna get 20% off. Okay, and that's not a one-time thing, multiple, use all of them multiple. If you've got. And then we'll give you also for, like, if you have investment properties, 10%, just like your clients. So we give you that, but on your own personal home, It's like, I just can't, like, it's, you know, it's like bare minimum. Cause we want you to try this. This store, Factory Flooring Direct, has been around for over 20 years. They've got the Gephardt seal, everything like that. Great company to work for. Really great people. So, warranty for life on carpet, which is different than any other carpet company on the installation. So if it starts rolling, doing it, just call us. It's 10 years later, we'll come fix it. That's,
Even just normal stretching?
yep,
Right.
yeah, so that's kind of cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's pretty nifty. And then what I'll also do is once you register, then within the next day or so, you'll get a digital coupon. And it's gonna be something similar to this, where it says your name as the realtor, your company name, and then your client, it's for your client. And it says 10% off your entire purchase. You can take that and text it to them or email it out, just kind of a way to reach out. Hey, I'm your realtor for life. Remember me? You know, in the sense of just a reminder instead of, hi, remember I'm a realtor? This way, there's something that we can give you that you can give them, which is what it's the value, the reminder, they give them a value, you know, things like that. So, and like I say, they'll call me direct. I will help the customers direct. I've helped probably 2,000 homeowners just pick flooring, pick everything. I've worked at design centers. I've built design centers and put them together for that flooring store that I worked with and helped high-end builders with all of their clients and have a really high success rating with customer service. And so it's great.
Awesome.
So-
Thanks, Janet.
Yeah, so, okay. so-
Anybody have any questions for her?
What are your service areas?
Okay, so that is nifty. Let's talk about that.
It's on the bottom of your card.
Where did my command go?
Perfect.
Yeah, so you know what, that is what I just added to this, because I reprinted it with this new company. Instead of saying we're in Lake Point and Draper, who cares? We're we
Right.
service. But if you, as a realtor or on this program, have somewhere in Wyoming, you call me, we'll figure it out. Okay, we'll get somebody there. If you guys, I just did a job down in Boulder, Utah. Does anyone know where that is? It's 4 hours away. But you know what? We did it. We made it work. And this company that I work with is more about that. So I'm really excited about that. So anyway, yeah, so Salt Lake, Summit, Wasatch, Morgan, Davis, and Utah County, pretty much kind of an hour-ish is our best, you know, way to it's who I'm marketing to with that. But again, if you're on the program, we want to be your flooring company for life, whatever. So, okay, so did anyone register? On the little QR code? Okay, here you go. Here's that. Are you a realtor? Yeah, okay. So this would be more for, I want to give this away. Your wife called me, she's like, do you have a flashlight that can detect urine? And I was like, I'm like, I'm gonna find one, so I have one to give away. Anybody who wants that.
She's inspecting rental properties.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I actually did one on her desk. So anyway, so if anyone is really, would you want it?
I would totally use it.
Okay, so there you go.
Thank you.
Okay, so then this one will be a question that I'll come up with at the end. Anyway, or maybe who has the coolest question? Well, let me do this. What we sell is laminate, LVP, luxury vinyl plank, which is the waterproof. Carpets, tile, we do it all. Showers, backsplashes, everything like that. So we've got installers to do all of that. Everything we've got tons of stock carpet and LVP and hard surface. So if you've got something that flip that needs to happen pretty quick, we can get you within a week or two for sure and have the product here. But most product I can get here through the mills because we're all direct through the mills within a week or two, you know, and then we would schedule you within that and just make the ETA, you know, whatever the ETA is, just get you right installed right around that. So does anyone have questions? I'm that good, huh? Just explain it all.
You guys do refinishing of wood floors?
I do, we sub it out and we actually we now do that because then we get the carpet job too. And that I'm doing a job with that.
After doing your carpet, refinishing your wood floors, that's.
Yeah, so we do that as well.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't on purpose.
Yeah. Okay, so for this gift card, where is the new place we're opening?
Draper.
All right, 1 through 10. 8 to whoever.
972. Oh.
5. Did anybody say anything? Okay, so yours, okay.
Did anyone say anything?
I know.
Did somebody say I know?
Anyway, so yeah, so just.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's free. Again, there's no, you're just registering with your store so that I can kind of reach out. And every so often and say, hey, here you go, here's a discount, remember us, here's a coupon, really, here's a coupon for your client. There's no, you don't have to quit, you don't have to pay a credit card, you don't do anything like that. We also have a 12-month interest. So that's pretty nifty as well.
Nice.
And, you know, so that if someone wants to do, they can't afford it, you know, that's another option. So.
Cool. Thanks, Janet.
Okay, thank you.
So she really is great. You know, it's kind of like having a general contractor on your job. You can call that one guy that fixes the other stuff and you just want to say, I'll take care of it. Right. And that's what Janet did. She stepped into a situation we had, just wrong carpet, going the wrong spot and this and that, and we made it all work. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, one last thing, guys. We do have other classes coming up. Most of you that have been registering for our trainings have been subscribing to get notifications of our future trainings, because we do this every week. And I've been calling people just to make sure that when you register, you know that it's for lots of different presenters, right? Sometimes people are saying, oh, I want to go to all of these classes, so they're subscribing or whatever. So I just have kind of putting that out there. If you did subscribe, we're going to send out a text, a couple of emails, just to remind you each week. But we do have classes scheduled out probably a couple of months, so you can see what's coming up. If you want, whether it's a CE class or you just like the topic, you just want to learn. I'm not as concerned about the CE credit as I am about the education and just making everybody better agents and better at our craft and being able to serve our clients more. Next week, we're actually doing something new. We're actually going to do an overview, me and my buddy Eric, on our brokerage model. And we always say, if you haven't looked at EXP in the last year, you really haven't looked at EXP, because they're changing so many things and so many new ways for us to get more business. And so I have a shameless bride too, even for you guys that are on my team. I think I've already told some of you about it by text or whatever, but if you come, then you and your guest are actually invited to my home that next Saturday for a pool party.
Oh, wait, my.
You can come too, and you can even bring somebody, but if you come and your guest, and so Ashley's actually invited gonna invite one of her friends and say, hey, I want you to come to the pool party, but you gotta come to this first. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, find me on TikTok or Instagram. It's a pretty badass pool. But it just finished this year, so
It's
gonna be fun. Let's see, what else do I got, Ashley? Oh, just some more of the classes that count. Louie's out in about 6 more weeks. We're gonna have him back on leadership. Awesome. Okay, that's it. That's all we got. Thanks for sticking around on Zoom, you guys. It's the last, and you guys that are here, let's have some lunch.
Thank you.
Yeah.